Hi, everyone, and welcome to another TOEFL Prep live lesson. So I'm just going to check over here, see if there's comments on here. Oh, yeah, great. So there's a lot of people commenting that they are from Russia and planning to take the TOEFL next year. So hi, Daria. There's another person, if I can pronounce your name correctly, Fajria. From Russia, from Surgut, and I see another comment here from Yerbolat, hello, and from Katerina, Zhenya. Okay, so a lot of people, great. Vitalina, sorry about that. Nikita, so great to see a lot of people here joining, and thanks for, somebody planning to take the TOEFL like 6 years from now. Okay, I think you're probably getting a lot of good preparations in advance for that. Okay, somebody from Belarus, hello, Katerina, and whether deciding on an American college or when to take the test. Okay, and Evgeny, hello, and Elena, hello, from Siberia, and taking the TOEFL next year. Okay, so well, a lot of you are like maybe not necessarily have plans in the immediate future right now for like in the next couple months, but if you are planning to take the TOEFL this year in the next couple months, please let me know. And I think these training videos should be helping you kind of see some of the best strategies and tips to get you prepared. So hopefully if you've gotten a chance to see some of the other live lessons, let me know. Let me know if you have watched any of those other webinars. So today we're continuing with the speaking section. This will be the last one for the speaking section for the question type 6, which will be about the academic lectures. And this one is typically you don't have any reading material. You just have a professor who is giving a 3-minute description of a concept and maybe about 2 examples of how that concept exists. It's hard to give a very general description of how that lecture works because they all are dependent on the different subjects that they could be. They could be botany, they could be astronomy, there could be things in economics, there could be things of sociology. So there's a lot of different subjects that could be described there, and there could be different concepts that are like typical that could be in that could be discussed. And there usually would be 2 ways to describe a concept and how it could be applied. And so I'll go through here, get the presentation started shortly. And just to let you guys know, so if you've seen some of the previous webinars that we've done for the speaking section so far, basically I'll give you some of the information about how that question is organized, what the question will include, and what you need to keep in mind for preparing your answer, organizing it. We will look at how your answer is scored, what is in the speaking rubric, and I'll give you an example of one of these questions, and I would invite you to send me a speaking sample so that I can give you a live feedback during this lesson today. So that'll be once we get to the end of that presentation and showing you a template, how you can organize your answer, and some typical phrases that you could use in your answer to organize it and keep it kind of flowing and linking the sections of your answer, and then giving you that opportunity to send me an audio recording, and I'll give you that feedback. So hopefully there'll be a lot of people who want to participate with that. So getting still a lot of hellos, and thank you for joining. And so hello, Safina, Maria, and Vika. So it's great to have a lot of people here today. So I'm going to now start sharing my screen for there. I would also like to mention that before I start to share my screen, if you can take a look on the video that you have on here, there's a little gear image at the bottom, and if you click on that, it's in the video where you would have like the play button and then the volume button, and then over to the side, maybe my finger should be over this way, to the side it should be the gear function, and it says YouTube, and then you can expand it for full screen. If you click that gear icon, you have the option where it says quality. That's like the third option. It might be on automatic. It might say like automatic 360 pixels. You might want to switch that to the highest one, like 720, if you have that option for your internet connection in the YouTube, and that will guarantee that you have like the highest quality video. Because sometimes some people have said that they can't see the slides clearly, and sometimes that is related to the quality that YouTube is automatically broadcasting with the video. And I would go in and manually change that to the highest level. That way you see clearly what is on the screen. I will try to zoom the image so that you can see the content of the slide as clearly as possible. But you can also definitely increase that quality directly with the YouTube, that gear function. So for the settings there. Okay, so okay, so yeah, great. So we have another person joining, Maxime and Indra, who are planning to take the test the end of this week, so March 4th and March 11th. So hopefully these lessons are helping you with these kind of last-minute preparations. Okay, so I'm going to start my screen share here, and please let me leave a comment that you know that you can see my screen. So here I have my screen. Let me know if you can see that. I just appreciate a little yes, we can see your screen. If you can leave a comment like that, that lets me know. Any yeses? Any yeses? We can see your screen. That would be great. Yes, we can. Great. Thank you, Safina, for that comment. Okay, great. So yeah, we're here today. This is like the 7th lesson we've done together. And this will be the focus on task number 6. Okay, yes. Thank you, Natalia and Irbalat and Marina. So yes, Maria, so, and Roman. So great. Thank you for letting me know that you can see this. Okay, so for those of you who may not know me, I'm Jonathan. I've been teaching languages and learning languages and teaching for over 20 years now. And I'm from the United States. I'm from California, from Southern California. However, I haven't lived in the United States since 2002. I've been living and teaching abroad. I moved to France in 2002, and I studied in Paris, and I studied French literature and musicology at the Sorbonne there. And I also started teaching English in elementary schools, and then working with students with like high school students, university students, and business professionals. And then I started teaching at some language schools for business English. And I worked with a lot of multinational companies like Air France, Société Générale, and then in 2008, I decided to move to Mexico City, where I currently live. And I've been here now for about 8 years. And again, I've done a lot of teaching with businesses and freelance teaching as well. And I've also been teaching online, getting started online in 2009. And then I've primarily this last year been doing a lot more and more TOEFL prep training. I've had students in the past taking the exam and gotten good results and gotten into American universities. And then this year has been primarily international students from around the world. So a lot of students from Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, people from South America as well, several countries around Europe, Western Europe, and Central Europe as well. So there's with Linguatrip and with the community, there's a lot of students globally, and everybody is definitely preparing for their TOEFL exams, and it's been great to have it helped so many people with their preparations, and to get the feedback that they're getting really great results. Just this morning or last night, I got a response from one student who said she got a 117. So that's basically the same score that Marina and I have both received. And I didn't get the specifics on which sections, what score she got for which section, but it's great to be able to see students are effectively using these tips and organizing their preparations and really getting really the results that they want so they can get into their best universities. So that's a little bit about me, about my background, and some of the training that I've been doing this for the English training, especially like the TOEFL prep training. So today, specifically, we're looking at the speaking task number 6. And overall, this is basically summarizing an academic lecture. So this is, make sure I can zoom in, make this a little bigger. Hopefully that's a little better for you to see. You're going to listen to a lecture that's about 2 to 3 minutes long. I would strongly encourage you to take notes. It's very important that you're note-taking, that you get good at that, and to do that on a regular basis. One thing that you could try doing is listening to like TED Talks, where people are giving presentations and explaining concepts, and get in the habit of using some scratch paper to take notes while you're listening to that. And you probably want to separate your scratch paper so that you can know like what is the topic of the lecture, what is the concept being described, what is the description of that, what is it, and what are the examples that are being given. So here are some typical questions that after you listen to the lecture, they're going to ask you something like, using the points and examples from the lecture, explain how, and then they'll give a concept and maybe 2 concepts. So this one is from like a biology lecture. It's saying like, explain how the this animal and this animal defend themselves from like insects or from pests or something like that. So it's giving the 2 examples of these 2 animals or 2 plants and showing how the topic might be related to kind of defense mechanisms in a kind of a natural, in a science setting. Another one might be using the points from the lecture, explain why researchers think that, and then whatever that topic is, kind of, I think the example that was in this one was how babies, like why researchers think that babies may, I don't know, I forget what they had in there, but I basically deleted these so you can just get an idea of what the general way that these questions might be phrased. There's another example, using the points and the examples from the lecture, explain what this concept and this concept are and how they make a third thing more effective. So the big topic would be this last one, this how this da-da-da is made to be more effective. That would be the big topic. And then these 2 things, explain what this and that are. Those would be the concepts that would be developed by the professor in the lecture. You would need to take notes on those and be able to quickly and briefly explain what they are. You don't want to get too far into the details, but you need to be able to with your note taking, clearly get what the concept is, what its description is, and how it relates to the topic. And lastly, another example here, describe what this concept is and explain how the experiment discussed by the professor illustrates this phenomenon. So as you can see here, there's usually like maybe 1 or 2 of a concept, and then there's an explanation and examples being given and details for that. So you need to do a lot of note taking. And this, to really get good at this one, I mean, it's hard because it's like preparing you for the reading section. I mean, there's so many ways that you could prepare for this, but you really need to see examples of this and work on testing yourself with practice tests and practice questions to really get a better idea of what you need to do for your note taking and how your note taking is going to help you for your answer. But these are just a few typical ways that the question will be phrased. Okay, so next on here, in terms of the speaking rubrics and how your answers are being evaluated or assessed, we've seen this rubric before. We've seen this before in like question 3, 4, and 5. It's the same one. This for the integrated speaking task. It's slightly different for the task number 1 and 2, but basically because you're combining information from like a reading passage and lecture, and specifically this one there's no reading passage, so it's only the lecture. You need to make sure that you have the details that you take notes on are accurate. Looking at a score report, I won't give you the score report, but this is looking at a score report for somebody who got like the what it said limited for the academic section. If the limited score, meaning like the lowest score possible, or I mean, the lowest score would probably be a 0, but in terms of a limited of like getting a score of 1.5 to 2 points, if they got limited for their how well they did talking about academic materials like the lectures, it says, okay, in your response, you were able to use English to talk about the basic ideas from academic reading or lecture materials, but in general, you include few relevant or accurate details. It is sometimes difficult for listeners to understand your response because of problems with grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. Overall, you are able to respond in a general way to the questions, but the amount of information in your responses is limited, and the expression of ideas is often vague and unclear. So I'm reading that from a score report for somebody who got the evaluation of limited on academic. So what that reveals to me is it says you got general details, but you didn't include the relevant or accurate details. There could also be a problem with pronunciation or vocabulary or grammar, but overall where it says getting the general information, but the ideas are vague or unclear. So it's really important, as you can see in this where it says topic development, you want the ideas to be clear, you want them to be specific and not vague. So you don't want a general idea being expressed. You want to be very specific in your details that you're presenting for these concepts, for these examples. And as they say here, yeah, if you had problems with grammar or vocabulary or the pronunciation or the fluency, if your phrases sound automatic or they don't, or it sounds like you're pausing too much or reflecting too much, that could also affect your score. So last time we looked at the score report that I received when I got like a 117, I just wanted to give you the opposite here of if somebody had like the lowest score and what would affect that, what would create that low score. So you basically want to aim for the highest one possible, make sure that your notes are clear and that you are really making sure your pronunciation is easy to follow, your pacing is good, and making sure it's really well organized. So how do we do that basically? So what you want to include here, make sure you state what this idea is, this concept that is being expressed in that academic lecture. Make sure you know what the reasons are the professor gives or the examples and how they relate to the main idea. Don't just list them, but show the relationship. So that means like it could be a cause and effect. It could be sequential. There could be some contrast. Something could be related or due to something, about like a reason and a result. So clearly show that relationship between the reasons and the examples and how they relate to that main idea. So it's not enough just to say what the idea is and then give the example that the professor says. You need to draw the link between between these examples for that. One tip from one of the books was saying, don't spend too much time on the tiny details. So if you go too far into detail, you might run out of time, or it might sound like you're disorganized or distracted. So you do need to prioritize the details that are in the lecture and in the answer that you're giving. Oftentimes I give the example to students to say, if you had a 1 liter bottle of water and you had a cup that can only fit like 0.25 of a liter, like a quarter of a liter, you can't physically put the 1 liter of liquid in the cup. You have to pick and choose, you have to filter. So the lecture itself might be 2 to 3 minutes worth of audio and content. You can't physically put 2 to 3 minutes worth of audio and concepts and information into 1 minute, 60 seconds of your answer. So you have to pick and choose and filter and decide what is the most important, what is the most relevant information in the lecture. So, so when it says don't spend too much time on tiny details, it's because you need to focus your energy on deciding which information is most important in there. Make sure you're using these transition words and linking words to say like things like because, or also, or due to this, or however, to show some contrast, or consequentially, or first and then next, so you can show some kind of cause and effect or sequencing to show how these concepts relate to each other. Don't try to repeat all of the information in the lecture. That's kind of related to the point I was just making there about you can't fit 1 liter into 25 milliliters. You can't physically do that. So it's probably a good idea to rephrase things, put them in your own words. That shows people that you understood the content and you're able to kind of rephrase it and paraphrase it. You do want to have a wide range of vocabulary. You don't always, you would want to kind of avoid repeating yourself if possible. That if you don't say the same word twice, it does show that you can kind of rephrase yourself, or it shows you have some variety. In terms of your delivery, try to speak fluidly and clearly. Try to avoid hesitations if possible. Use intonation to your advantage. Intonation, that's kind of using your voice to kind of speak louder on content words, on words that would clearly show what the subject is or what the verb is or the action. I haven't really gone too far into details about what intonation is, but you can do a lot of searches online to see what is intonation, how does it relate to speaking in English. I think for today's explanation, I don't really have examples to kind of go in and show you in intonation, but you can do a lot of research to find how you can improve it. And definitely you want to keep your answers organized and easy to understand and follow, so that that's really going to help improve your scores. And I've seen really good results with students where if their answer, when they were just improvising it, and especially if they didn't take notes, it was very easy to get disorganized and to sound like they were improvising and sound like they didn't know what they were talking about. So it's really important to take notes, good notes, and to use your notes to help you organize your answer. And when you do that, the quality of your answer definitely will go up. It will increase. So the more you practice this, the better it will become. Okay. So next on here is like a template and phrase. This template is coming from the Cracking the TOEFL, like the Princeton Review. So this basically state what the main idea is, state what the first reason is and the details for that. And then very importantly, show that link between that first reason and how it relates to the main idea. Then move on to the next reason or this concept and the details of that and how it also relates to the main idea. And then here are some phrases I've borrowed from the ultimate or complete guide to the TOEFL by Bruce Rogers. And this is the lecture is about, or you could say a phrase like the topic of the lecture is, and then getting into, again, the professor mainly talks about, or the professor says that in terms of giving some details and reasons, according to the lecture, or the professor also states that. So this is additional information. And then maybe the professor gives 2 examples of this concept, and then using the sequential phrases like first and second, and then giving explanations with like because and also additionally. And probably you want to wrap this up with a concluding statement like in conclusion or in short or all in all, so you can show how these concepts related one to the other and how they were developed according to the professor's lecture. So I would really want to get you have an opportunity to practice this, because right now it's very theoretical on how you could organize your answer, how you can, what phrases you can use for that. Okay, so we're going to use the Speakpipe tool here, and this is speakpipe.com/voice recorder. I'm going to copy this on here so you can just click on it yourself. And this is, Speak. It's a free recording tool. You don't have to install anything. If you have joined these webinars, these live lessons before, you know that we have used this before, so you can provide an audio answer there. And so the way you use this, as you can see here, you click on, once you click on the link, it'll have a green button that says start recording. So you will, you can click on that. Then it has a timer here. It says recording, and it shows you how much time it's going. And then you can click on the stop button once it's been the amount of time. For this question, type 6, there's 60 seconds. And then after that, you click stop and then click skip. Then you can move on to the next screen, which will show you your recording. I would click save on server. Then click the green button that says save. You can include your name if you want. That's not necessary. And then it will process it and say it's loading onto the server, and it will give you this this link. And I would ask that you copy and paste that link into the comments here for so I can listen to your audio file and play it back and then give you that feedback on how your speaking did. So one more time, I will show you this previous page. So once you click that link that says speakpipe.com/voice-recorder, give it access to your webcam for the microphone, for the audio. Click start recording, then click the stop button when you're finished, then skip. Then on the next page here, you'll have your recording. Click save on server, then finally save it, and then it will process it and give you this link that you can paste in the comments section here. So we're going to practice that with an example from examenglish.com. So I'll give you this link here that you can use. So if the audio for some reason is not the best with this tutorial, you can go directly on here to the website that I'm going to be using for this example question for a lecture for speaking question type 6. So I'm going to use this audio that you can find on this website, examenglish.com, and for the TOEFL preparations and the speaking question 6 there. So I'm going to play that right now, and I would ask all of you if you could take some notes on there while you're listening to this audio file. And then I'm going to be taking notes as well. And then we can prepare an answer based on this question. So I'm going to, just one second here, I'm going to grab a piece of scrap paper so I can take my own notes. Just one second, just loading this. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why it's not loading right now. I'm going to try loading this on a different. Yeah, it was just working a little bit before.
It's always been one of those big sci-fi questions. Is there life on Mars? Or rather, could Mars ever support life? Well, it is generally assumed that in order to have life, you need water. Well, ever since the 1960s, we've been sending out probes to Mars to try to ascertain if there is water on Mars, or if there ever has been. And in the 1990s, 1996 to be precise, the U.S. Mars Global Surveyor was launched. The surveyor remains in orbit around Mars to this day, and it has some rather nifty equipment on board, including a high-resolution camera, a sensor which can identify soil and rocks, and a laser that can take measurements and map the planet's surface. But what have we learned from the Global Surveyor? Well, we found out that yes, there was once water on Mars, and in great quantities too. I'm talking oceans, seas, lakes, much like Earth today. They have deduced this because of the shapes of the mountains and valleys on Mars. They are the same shape as those formations on Earth that we know were created by water. In fact, some analysts are suggesting that there's still water on Mars to this day, but deep down, in holes 100 to 400 meters below the surface. This idea created quite a stir, as you can imagine, and a number of scientists have tried to either prove or refute this theory using other evidence available to us. Some Chinese scientists, for example, have been studying a meteor that was collected from the Antarctica in 2001, but they found no evidence of water there. But that's not to say that there isn't any water on Mars, as Mars and meteorites are separate entities entirely. Another source of evidence we have is images from astronomical telescopes. But we can't see much of the planet from this angle, just the poles, and they're covered in ice caps. Dry ice, not H2O. So that doesn't help us one way or the other.
Okay, so that's
the professor tells us that there was once water.
That's a sample answer. So on here, now the question, these are some of my notes you can see here from listening to that. And so as I'm preparing my answer, I would start to go in here and say that the question is that the next slide shows here, using information from the talk, describe what we know about water on Mars and how we know it. So looking at my notes, I would say that there is there's there are sensors and equipment that are on the camera. I think I missed one thing that was on there, but we have taking the camera and this and looking at images of Mars, that we're looking at the shapes of mountains, and we're getting some kind of indirect evidence that there might be water, or there were oceans at one point, and that maybe now today there might be water below the surface. Another point that's being made in here is the difference between meteorites and the planet Mars. The meteorite did not include water, although they were studying this. And lastly, there's an image from telescopes that show that there might be some evidence of ice caps, although it would be dry ice. So dry ice is not the same thing as water. So those would be a little bit of my notes of how I could prepare my answer. And so I would really love to get a chance to hear some of your answers. So if you have a chance to use that Speakpipe tool to record your answers, that would be great to be able to give you that feedback on there. So any brave souls willing to provide some of their answer here? I'll go back. I mean, you've seen a little bit right now of the notes that I was taking on there, and the question saying, using information from the talk, describe what we know about water on Mars and how we know it. And let me go back to some of the template phrases that you could use for your answer. So you can state what the main idea is, the reason, the details, and the linking, how that relates to the main topic, and some of these phrases like the lecture is about, the professor talks about. Okay, I don't yet see an answer that we can comment on, but I would definitely, going back into this information, say that you need to look at how do we know if there's water on Mars, and saying that there's a probe going around the planet and that is taking high resolution images, and it's analyzing what we see in those images, like the shapes, and to show that there was at one point there was large amounts of water, like oceans, seas, and lakes, and that probably today that information is probably below the surface. And another source of proof or evidence is coming from telescopes that are, however, it's not a complete image. We can only see the poles, like the opposite ends of the planet, and we do see that there's ice caps. However, that's dry ice, and I'm not a chemist, so I don't know precisely, but I think dry ice is more related to carbon dioxide. I don't think that's not water, so that's that might give some misleading information that it looks like it's water, but it isn't. It isn't like the ice that we have on our own planet for Antarctica or the polar region. So, okay, great. There's a recording here from Alexei. So let's take a listen to his answer, and hopefully there'll be an answer from somebody else as well.
So the main idea of the lecture was, is there any life on Mars or not? The first reason to say that there was or there still is life on Mars is that scientists have found water on Mars, which have been proven by the shapes on the ground, on the soils, shows that there was once floating water or ice caps. It was captured by the telescopes on the poles of Mars. And thus, as the water means life, there could have been life on Mars. But some scientists argue that those shapes in the ground could be left by asteroids, and the ice caps could be filled with dry ice.
Okay, great. Thank you for your answer, Alexei. In terms of the answer that you give here, in terms of the pausing and the phrasing, I think that might be one of the first things I notice. In terms of some of the phrases might be a little shorter. You do have content there in terms of what you took from the notes and what you understood from the lecture. You did start to make a mention of like the ice caps, and it sounded like first you were mentioning that could be related to from the sensors about like the soil, but then you did clearly start to say that was related to the telescopes. So that's good, because as I mentioned, what will be distinguishing between like a high quality answer and a lower one is how accurate your information is in terms of your note taking and how the information relates to each other. So it's very important that like not only you get that information when you're taking the notes, but you're also able to clearly state it in your answer. Also, in terms of the question, if I go back to the question itself, I'll skip back. I'll skip over here, and it says like using information from the talk, describe what we know about water on Mars and how we know it. I think the professor does mention the possibility of like life on Mars, but the bigger question is talking about water itself and evidence of how do we know if there was water. Yes, there is a relationship between water and the possibility of life on a planet, and there are some interesting articles that were published this last week from like NASA in which they were discovering some new planets, and they're wondering if there's possibilities of water, things like that. Be careful on your answer. Like, don't include external information. For example, I just mentioned that I just read this article about NASA. Be careful not to mention that external information. That would definitely lower your answer. I'm not saying you did that, but I'm just saying if you have any kind of temptation to include, like let's say you are a specialist in this field that's related to that lecture, be very careful about the information. Only use information that is being presented in the lecture. Don't have the temptation of including stuff that you know yourself or stuff that you've recently read in a book or an article or heard about in a magazine or on like some YouTube video. Be very, very careful to only use information that's being presented in the lecture, because that's really what they want to see for your notes and for your answer. But I would just keep working a little bit on your delivery so your speaking is a little bit faster for that. Okay, great. Let's take another listening to an audio from Irina. So.
The main idea of the lecture is, would Mars support life or not? The professor mentioned that in 1960s has been sent a probe on Mars to find water on the planet because it is essential for life forms. And in 1996, US Global Survey on Mars was launched with high-resolution cameras, with nifty equipment and laser measurements. It was proved that once it has been water on Mars, and water of high quality too, like oceans, seas, and lakes, because of the evidence of some formations shaped by water, similar to the same on Earth. Then some people suggest that it's still water on Mars, but deep below the ground. Otherwise, Chinese scientists in 2001 found no evidence of water. Another source of evidence is astronomical equipment, but we couldn't see water through them, just dry ice and falls. So, according to the lecture, we are still not sure does water on Mars exist or not.
Okay. Yeah, wow, you've got a lot of information in there. You're able to speak very quickly. I would just make sure that with your intonation and your phrasing, that make sure that sorry about the noise there. Make sure that the most important details are being presented in your answer. I do get a bit of an impression that you want to cover all of the information that you understood in the lecture and all the information that you took in your notes. But I would say, like, one of the, sorry for the background noise, like the motorcycles. I would say that, like, the piece of information about, like, the Chinese scientists and the meteorite and whether they found water or not, and that point between meteorites and the difference between the planet, I think that piece of information might be a little bit of a distraction between the talk about water on Mars. So I think that information be a little less important, and I would focus on only the information that relates to the question about water on Mars. I mean, there is the broader topic that the lecture is about like, could Mars sustain life? But the question that's being asked on this question is, what do we know about water? So make sure to keep your focus on that part, and also, yeah, be picking and choosing which information is most relevant and how it relates most appropriately to the question. So they don't necessarily want you to just repeat all the information that you understood and that all the information you took notes on. You do have to pick and choose which is going to be most important. Also, if you are speaking quickly, make sure that your voice is kind of has some variety in terms of loud words, soft words, because that aspect of the delivery, the intonation, is going to affect how we interpret like what's most important in according to you as a speaker. So it is our job as a speaker and delivering the information and an answer that we are kind of emphasizing the most important words, and less information is kind of a little bit softer, a little bit faster. So we do have those kind of ups and downs with our volume and with the length of the words. So we don't just want the feeling like we're speaking and running quickly. We don't want to give the impression that we're giving an answer that would be like for the 100-meter Olympic race to see who is the fastest man or woman in the world. We don't want our voice to give that impression that we're just speaking as quickly as we can because we only have 60 seconds and we like are trying to do a race. We do need to still select information that's most important and relevant for the question, and make our voice kind of go up and down and have some shape to it, so that the listener, the examiner, can hear that we are making that evaluation and processing the information accordingly. Okay, great. Let me get one more answer here from Marina. So thank you for your answer. And let's take a listen here.
The speaker is talking about if there is a water on Mars or not. This professor was launching a survey where was a high-resolution camera on the board, and they could see oceans, rivers, but it doesn't answer if there is water below surface. Also, the professor is talking about using telescope, but it's not so good because it shows ice cubes, which means dry water, and so we still can't answer the question if there is water under the surface. And also, some Chinese surveys can't answer this question too because they don't give background.
Okay, yeah, thank you for your answer. And I would say you do point out some of the important features here about like the answer is kind of, it still is kind of inconclusive, that we don't have a definitive answer about yes or no. If there is like complete evidence of water, there might be some things that suggest it. So I think that's good. I think your answer does reflect some of that of like, well, we have some of the information, but we don't know. There's still some question marks there. There was maybe a tiny kind of inaccurate thing you said here about like ice cubes. I think the lecture did talk about like ice caps. So that's a section of the top and bottom of the planet where it's slightly covered, and it was here. It wasn't exactly dry water. I'm not sure if you said that specifically, but it was dry ice, which is a thing that we a way we call, what is it, like carbon dioxide in a like a solid state. People usually use that for like for concerts and events where they get like some kind of a fake smoke. That's usually what dry ice is. But basically the answer here is including information there. I would just keep working on the delivery. So maybe you're working on your confidence level as well, so that you sound comfortable speaking and delivering the information, and not so hesitant as well in delivering the information. So that is another key aspect of the delivery of your answer is, so even if you might doubt your level of English, or if you had all the information in the lecture, in your notes, any of those hesitations or doubts that you might have, you need to kind of ignore them, and kind of like a poker player who's playing a game and they're wearing dark sunglasses and trying to hide how they look, then you might want to kind of hide any of those little doubts or lack of kind of confidence, or try to sound as confident as possible when speaking. And that takes practice. That takes a lot, usually kind of speaking in the mirror, in front of a mirror, recording yourself, seeing how you sound, reacting to that, trying to experiment with some things, and using that as a strategy. Okay, great. Here's another answer from Safina, and I think this will probably be our last one, and then I'll get to another question from Roma. Okay.
The professor states that since 1960s, the scientists have been trying to find out whether Mars has water on its surface or not. The first example of finding out an answer to this question was launching a special project by the United States. With the use of special equipment, which included cameras and special measurements, scientists found out the same shapes of oceans, lakes, and rivers that we have on Earth. But that was not a clear example and evidence of having water on the surface. The second example is using special astronomical telescopes, which also couldn't give a clear evidence of having water on the surface, as scientists found only ice caps. All in all, scientists don't know exactly whether water is on Earth or not.
Okay, great. I really like how, like your last statement, you included a concluding thing of overall, like we don't know. So I think that concluding statement is very important. I think that's great. Also, in terms of delivery, you did have a very kind of purposeful way of speaking. You did seem to be monitoring the pacing and making sure that your sentences were clear, and how you could kind of deliver that information, make sure that your examiner or the person listening to your audio is able to follow you. And I think that's very important. That makes sure that that your answer is easy to follow, easy to understand, your pronunciation is clear. In terms of your note and representing this information, it sounded very, very clear. That you had the evidence there about the oceans, but still it wasn't conclusive. You also have the information about the telescopes, and yet again, that's still not conclusive. So you do have those two main reasons that are supporting this talk. And I think for the pronunciation, there's just the thing that in the lecture it talks about ice caps, and I think your pronunciation sounded a little bit more like ice cape. So that could be potentially confusing, but so that might be just specific for you of a short A versus like a long A, if you want to review those sounds for listening comprehension and also pronunciation. But overall, I would say your answer was very well delivered, and I would keep going on this way of having like keep your pacing and your phrasing under control. I like that. It was very easy to follow your answer, and combined with relevant information, I think this really creates a strong answer. And really having that last final concluding statement was also very helpful to show like what was the conclusion of this lecture and the evidence that we have or how it relates to this question. So great. Here's a question from Roma. Not necessarily particularly about the TOEFL, but let's say you pass the TOEFL and you understand nothing in the reading, nothing in the listening, nothing in the speaking. Okay. And another comment here from Marina saying like, okay, I'm worrying about potentially that same thing happening. What would you do? So I'm going to go off the screen sharing here and talk a little bit to the camera here. So hopefully you can see me. And so this can happen. I won't deny this. I did take the exam earlier this month, and I would say that specifically like the reading section, it's the first section that's on there. I mean, we'll go into these more in detail when we are talking about the reading section, but it is true. You could, there is a bit of luck that's involved in the test, and the fact that you could get topics and materials that are like related to how like your areas of specialty, specialization in terms of like whether you feel comfortable about this. Like I have a musical training and background, so if I got something that was related to music, I would feel very comfortable with that. If I had something related to history or studying languages and something, or education, those topics I would feel very comfortable with. But sometimes some of the really advanced sciences and detailed sciences, I might not feel so comfortable with that. And so this is why you need to do a variety of topics as much as you can to be familiar and exposed to a variety. So, so you need to go out of your comfort zone to develop your strategies. So it isn't just a matter of knowing some of that content, because basically they say if you saw this content for the first time on the test, that's normal. You wouldn't necessarily be expected to be an expert in any of that information. So you really need to have strategies in place to deal with distractions. For example, in the reading section, there was some background noise, like somebody was doing drilling, like 2 or 3 floors above where I was, like in the test center, and that was a distraction. It was noise. I had no control over that. Other students have also told me they've had problems with the air conditioning unit. So it might be too cold, it might be too hot. You might have the other students kind of talking to somebody, like how did the computer work, or as they're getting ready. So those little distractions could get in the way. They could affect how you focus. And I would say definitely prepare yourself in the worst case scenario environment. So go do the practice in a cafe that's busy, that might have background noise. Do this when it's early in the morning. I mean, some of the tests might start at 9 in the morning, some of them might start at 8. Try doing your practice materials when you haven't had breakfast, or when you haven't had coffee or something, and when you're in a bad mood and just have a headache, and try to work on those, the testing conditions in the worst case scenario, and figure out how is your reaction going to be in that environment. So it isn't just the test material itself, It also is your level of concentration. How do you kind of refocus and realize like, okay, I can't concentrate on this. How do I slow down? How do I deal with that? Each person is a little different, and each person responds to stress differently. Each person's is good at reading or good at listening or good at note-taking. You need to figure out what your weak points are, what your strong points are, and figure out strategies to how to improve that. Also realize, like, depending on how much time you're going to be doing for preparations, how much you can realistically improve in a short amount of time. If you're only preparing for 1 week, you probably want to focus on your strong areas and make those stronger. And if you have like a weak area, if you only have a 1 week or 2 weeks to prepare, you might not be able to like dramatically transform your weak points. You might just be able to minimize them, but you might need to really bring up your strong areas. So I hope some of that helps you in terms of, like, you want to avoid complete panic where you kind of just seize up and break down and can't focus and stop. You want to avoid that if possible. I asked some of this question to another language learner and who has taken lots of exams, and he was telling me to keep in mind it's not the end of the world if you take this test. I do recognize that it is a financial investment. It is a test that costs maybe about $150. You need to consider your budget and all that, but realize at the end of the day, $150, it's not the end of the world. Hopefully you realize, like, you've planned this a little bit earlier. So if you have a deadline for your application process, or for like where that is in your application and in your documents, hopefully you're taking this test as early as possible so that you have a plan B possible. If you're really taking this test at the last possible deadline and date, and then you're waiting for those 10 days for the results, and then you really need to submit those results at the last deadline, that's very stressful. So if possible, try to take the test earlier. So if you did have a bad experience where you couldn't concentrate, couldn't focus, realize that, okay, maybe what you needed was to take the test and just go through it, see what it feels like, and see how you react, and then realize maybe I have to take it a second time. So maybe your budget, you need to increase this and take the test a second time, which would be unfortunate, but it might be necessary for you to kind of go through the entire experience, get that bad experience out of your system, as a way to kind of say it that way, minimize it, and just say, okay, this happened, but now I know what it feels like. I know how to go through that. What am I going to do now? How am I going to improve it? And what am I going to do differently the second time I take the test? So that's really why it's important to take practice tests, as many as you can, before you take the actual test. So there's lots of books that have them. There's lots of websites that offer them as well. ETS has them as well that you can use as well. So try to do those practice sessions so you can kind of feel what it's like to go through the test, maybe without that whole financial investment of the entire actual test, but just see how you react, see what your your best strong points are and what your weak points are, and try to minimize the weak points as much as possible. Great. Well, I mean, that's a long explanation for that question, but it is very important to address that. And so thank you for bringing that up, Roma, and thank you everybody who has submitted an audio file. If I didn't get a chance to listen to it live during this lesson, I'll still listen to it and give you the feedback. But yeah, we've kind of covered about an hour for today for this, and just definitely want to recommend also, there's a button up there that says the sorry for my Russian. Забронировать индивидуальное занятие с Jonathanem от $34. So there, check that out. That's a link to the page as well for the lessons and the packages. There's also general English. If TOEFL is still a bit stressful and you want to just work on conversational skills, that's also an opportunity. And there are lessons and packages for the TOEFL as well there. So definitely check those out. And we'll be back next week for another lesson here. And this we've finished the 6 speaking questions, and we'll get into the writing section. So we'll be looking at the integrated writing, which is the reading passage and the professor's lecture, and how that information kind of combines and contrasts. And hopefully I can send you an example, a question before the lesson, because it requires like 20 minutes of writing. So we won't really have 20 minutes that I can give that to you during the lesson. So hopefully you can do that 20-minute writing before we have the lecture the next week. So that way we can look at your examples of writing during the section and give you feedback on that in addition to strategies. So I look forward to working with you, all of you next week, and thank you everybody who has joined us. And I hope you are finding these lessons useful and helpful for your preparations. And thank you once again for joining. Have a great day, great week, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Пока-пока.